Hi, everyone. Hello. Hello, and welcome to this class on the inner child. So, we're just going to be doing a little bit of a surface level dive into the inner child today because I want to show you how much there is to uncover and where you can go to further work through this within yourself. So I'm Angela. I'm a professional coach and counselor, and I've kind of had my own dealings with inner child work, and a lot of this stuff came up. So for those of you who don't know my story, I'll just briefly share that I've recently had a heart transplant and was given a terminal cancer diagnosis in 2023. And I'm still here and I'm thriving. And I just want to share with you how your beliefs and perspectives can actually shape your future and how you can live in peace and ease and fulfillment and calmness and love and work through all of these inner child wounds. And for me, a lot of the stuff came up when I was diagnosed. I realized that, wow, there's a lot of things surfacing here. It almost felt like a ball of yarn unraveling. And all these things, when you're told that your time is limited here on this earth, all these things came bubbling to the surface of just raw emotion. And I want to share today about how these inner child wounds actually manifest different sometimes and connect within men and women. And so for a lot of times for women, this will surface as a perfectionism loop, a looping cycle that you, no matter how hard you try and no matter how hard you try to figure things out and mentally change things, you're caught in this perfectionism kind of a looping cycle. And it doesn't matter what you do to will yourself out of it, you're just continue to be in it. Maybe you constantly feel like you need to be everything to everybody. This is an exhausting cycle of overgiving, and it just creates depletion and exhaustion within us. We burn the candle at both ends, trying to be there and be the everything for everybody, running here, running there, the be all end all. We have like zero boundaries in place. And when we do put them in place, we don't stick to them. And so there's also a connection of early criticism and judgments that ends up almost creating our own self-judgment on ourselves. And we bring this criticism in and we pass it along onto our children. And we a lot. And what I want to say before I keep going is that so many times our parents, and this is generational, and their parents did the absolute best they can with what they knew at the time. I'm just going to shut this light off because it's really, that is really helpful actually. I thought it was shooting light at my glasses, but anyway, it's okay. Everyone's doing the best that they can. We're all trying to do things. And even me, I've caught myself, saying, I will never treat my daughter like that or my son like that. And then you end up doing something or saying something that you said you would never do. And you feel just awful about it. And you realize that I just did the thing that I swore I would never do because that was done to me as a child or a teen or whatever. And yet we do that. And so this is so deep with pattern breaking. Anyway, there's just so much connection between early childhood criticism and judgments, and then how we do this self-judgment on ourselves, and then how we pass that along. There's also, it could be an impact on like your career in your job and asking for what you deserve and noticing that you belong and that what a contributor you are. There's the emotional caretaker pattern of taking responsibility for everybody else's feelings, feeling responsible that you need to provide a certain atmosphere that everybody feels a certain way when they're around you. taking responsibility for everybody around you and how they feel and making sure they're okay is not making sure you're okay. Maybe it's difficulty receiving support or nurturing, and there's a link between childhood emotion and adult boundaries. There's so much, and this can affect your relationships. This can affect romantic relationships, friendships, everything. And it even impacts on your own self-care and your own personal needs. And then let's talk about the achievement worth connection, because this is that trap of productivity equals worthiness. Self-worth is related to your accomplishments and how many certifications you have and how much schooling you've had and how much you've done. And is it ever enough? And there's never enough. You just never reach that point of being enough. So there's just so much with that achievement/worthiness connection. And in that, there's also, if you were lacking childhood praise and you weren't acknowledged for anything you've done as a child, it can also create this need as an adult to be validated, which is a whole nother scenario in this. And it can impact your work-life balance. It can impact all your relationships. It can create imposter syndrome as you get older. You're never good enough. This is an exhausting cycle of trying to prove yourself worthy. And so that's a lot how it affects women. Now, women and men it's all intertwined. I'm just breaking this down into what you may notice more. So maybe in men, there was early messages about being strong and not crying, about how you should suppress your affection because you should be a certain way. And then this goes on to just destroy adult relationships sometimes when this isn't dealt with. There's also a connection between childhood vulnerability and adult anger a lot. That goes with men and women, but a lot I've noticed in men feeling this way. They weren't allowed to be vulnerable, and so then they've suppressed their emotions for so many years that now it arises sometimes in anger. It can affect the intimate relationships. It can affect the parenting, and it can create this emotional disconnection between you and your children. And that goes for women as well. So there's all sorts of things that can arise from the things that we lacked in our childhood, or how we were treated or how we were judged or how we were criticized. And we carry this stuff with us, and it just like contaminates every area of your life if it's not addressed. And this childhood expectations and stuff that we were given can create this pressure in adulthood to do and be more and never enough. And there's this link between being this provider role and your self-worth and what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to be the provider and create that safety in your children. And then if they don't feel safe, it continues this burden. And so there's also a connection to when you want to take risks and making decisions, and this burden of perceived responsibility that's all on the man sometimes. But yet we take this stuff on and we just try and function like we think we're doing best, and we're just basically continuing these cycles and creating all of this uncertainty and stress and chronic stress as we go forward. And so there are some universal patterns here that we're going to talk about. So when we have all this uncertainty in our childhood, it creates adults that need to have control. It creates us to feel like we need to have control of everything. We have to create, and if we don't have control, we'll create some sort of false control feelings. And it can be in your finances, it can be in your job, it can be in your home, it can be anywhere. It can show up anything. I'm interested to see what you're thinking as I say these things. There's also connections between early chaos in the home, and how you live your current life, with how you organize things, and how your productivity and your feelings of overwhelm when life was crazy and chaotic as a child. All of this stuff affects everything. It kind of trickles down into relationships. It trickles into decision making. It trickles into anxiety, trickles into stress. And it really trickles down into the need to be validated and feel like be seeking constant approval, people pleasing. So if you're somebody that has always been a people pleaser, I would ask you, did you ever have approval and acknowledgement as a child? Were you ever seen, even heard? Were you told to, with the saying goes, children aren't seen and heard, they're to be quiet over here. And there's just so much linking between all these things, and linking between impersonal boundaries. This whole thing can be exhausting, seeking that external validation everywhere we go, and feeling the need to get like a little bit of a pat on the back, like, okay, you're doing okay, because we haven't had that in childhood. There's worthiness wounds and self-sabotaging patterns and behaviors that stem from all of this inner child work. And there's so much linking the feeling of lack financially and abundance, the lack in abundance and the lack to deep childhood wounds. And so how does this play out in our life by all of these things I just said? And it can really inhibit your self-expression, because if you've been feeling like you haven't been validated and now you're trying to control everything as an adult, you're scared to express yourself because you're scared to be criticized and judged, and you don't feel worthy, and you have imposter syndrome. And it kind of spreads all over life. And that's why I want to share with you how important it is to do this work, and how we'll be dealing with and going through a lot of this in my program called the Pain to Purpose program experience. Because all of these early messages about our body, they affect how we see ourselves today. They affect our self-image. They affect our worthiness. There is so much linking that emotional suppression to physical symptoms of stomach ailments, to disease, dis-ease. All of this stuff is all linked. And there's just so much connection, and I feel like it needs to be brought to the surface. We need to take a deep dive into this and really look at what is affecting you, what is holding you back, because I want everybody here to be able to go after their biggest dreams and goals and not be feeling like they're stuck in these emotional patterns and funnels, if you will, that are looping around and around that we just can't seem to get out of. And then when we do a little bit of what we think is, the inner work, there's this big gap between where we are and where we want to be, and we don't know how to get there. And sometimes it's because we need to uncover some of this patterns. We need to kind of peel that onion layer back. And sometimes there's tears to be shed, and sometimes there's wounds to acknowledge, and sometimes there's forgiveness to be had, and sometimes there's so much in here that we need to recognize. So if any of this, if you resonate with any of this in your own experience, I really suggest joining in the Pain to Purpose program with us so you can do a deep dive on this. So the question becomes then, what do you do with all this awareness? How do you actually transform all these patterns into stepping stones and growth, instead of just noticing them and then having a panic about, okay, I see where all this came from, but now what? So I have a community called the Create, Heal, Shine community. I'd love for you to join. If you're not, it's free. I also have a paid community called the School of Purpose, where I host the Pain to Purpose program. And that's where a 10-week journey that we're going to take together. And we don't just start learning about these patterns, we actually transform them and rewire our brains and our subconscious mind, our story, everything. But this community can become your safe haven for implementing all of these changes as you go forward, where other people understand your journey and you can be supported every step of the way. It doesn't matter if you're a man or woman breaking free from perfectionism or control or anger. These are all universal patterns, and that's why you need support to kind of work through that with people that are like-minded, doing the same thing, that understand how you feel and what you're, that, also understand that these are people who everybody wants to move forward. Everybody wants to better themselves and their mind and clear these things away so they can show up as the amazing person that they are and show up and do and be all that they truly are. Be who you are, aligned with your true self. I think it's so key to acknowledge how far you've already come so that you can kind of gauge where you're going to, because that's really important. So I want you to see that our inner child doesn't just carry our own experiences. This carries that echo of generations before us. Take a look at your hand right now and notice the lines. Notice any wrinkles. Notice the color. Notice everything you see in your hand, in the palm of your hand. Generations have gone before you and have given you a lot of these lines of lineage that are on your hand right now. The hand holds so much power and wisdom. And if you look at the lines and the wrinkles and you just say thank you, to your ancestors for giving you life, and acknowledge them that, they didn't know a lot of this stuff. They didn't know. Generations before us didn't know the impact that would come over the generations of time. But when you look at those deep rooted lines of your lineage that go way, way back, like your grandmother or grandfather and their grandmother, grandfather, and theirs and theirs and theirs all had something similar to you. Of course, we're each unique, but these came from them. The base of what you have, the blood flowing through you, came from them. It's sacred. So we're not bashing generations before us, but we're acknowledging and seeing how the world has changed, and over time, different things were taught and recognized and acknowledged. And the lines within your hand carry that echo of generations before us. We inherited patterns, Your grandmother lived through times where survival meant staying silent. Your mother probably learned being good meant putting others first. And then here you are wondering why you can't speak up or set any boundaries. And there is science behind all of this stuff that shows trauma and stress can actually be passed down through generations at a cellular level. This is not psychology at that part, it's biology. Your nervous system inherited so many responses before you could even choose. So here's what's amazing. You're not just aware of those patterns now, but you're the one in the lineage who's ready to heal them. You're the pattern breaker. So I want you to release any shame that you've been carrying around about these patterns. Your inner child, your parents, your grandparents, they did the best with what they know, with what they could. And that doesn't go for things like abuse and different things like that. I'm just speaking in general terms. So take a deep breath with me and let's release any shame that we've been carrying around about these patterns, because that's the first step. You can't work with all of your inner child and your parents' inner child and your grandparents' inner child. You can only work with you. You can only work with you. So let go of any shame or guilt that you've been carrying around. We have to notice these patterns and hold it with compassion. We have to see what doesn't serve us now, what is serving us and what doesn't serve us anymore. Because the patterns that were created were to protect us. We can just thank them. Thank you for being there. I see that you're trying to protect me, but I want to choose a new way of being. I want to embody my own unique, authentic self. I don't want to carry these with me. They're not me. And every time you choose differently, you're healing yourself. You're healing generations backwards and forwards. So this is where the true transformation begins, when we understand that our patterns are not our fault, but their healing is our responsibility. And that is where everything shifts. So I want to be able to show you how to identify your specific inherited patterns, how to use your nervous system for regulation, and practical steps for breaking different patterns, ways to create new empowering patterns. And we're going to talk about that in the program and go really deep. But if this resonated with you, I don't want you to miss out, because this is the one and only time I'm going to offer my lifetime access to my paid community, which is more than the program cost and is just one of 10 bonuses that I've included. And so you're basically getting the whole thing free. So if anything resonates here with you, don't be afraid to jump in. You're not just healing yourself. This is just one aspect of the program. You're not just healing yourself, you're healing lineage. The inner child is just one small part of how big this program is. And it's one of the most powerful gifts you can give yourself. So I just want you right now to just release any shame and feelings of sadness and guilt and shame, and just let it go. Let it go so you can work from this moment forward. There's so much hope. There's so much hope. I'm not even supposed to be here right now. There's so much hope for you. No matter what you're going through, it doesn't matter how deep and how painful it is. I mean, there is time. Things have to be the right time for you. If you're deciding that this is the time for me, this stuff ends here. I'm so done with this life. I want to embrace life and all the beauty in it, and I'm ready to move forward, then I want to invite you to join us. And if not, then maybe it's not the right time for you. It has to be the right time for you. It has to be the time that you look out the window and say, oh my gosh, there's so much more for me. I didn't think I would be at this stage of life right now where I am. I want to move forward. I will have so much more out there for me. So I hope that this helped kind of outline a lot about the inner child, and join us in the program if you want. And if not, that's okay too. I only want people to join that want to be there and that really are ready for change. This isn't for dabblers. This is we're going deep. So in the meantime, I want you to release any judgments and criticisms that you have felt or feeling right now towards yourself. Let some of those expectations that you have on yourself go. It's time to start breaking some of these patterns, creating new pathways, neutral pathways, not repeating the same cycle over and over and over and over. So I hope that this helped you see the different patterns and connections that the inner child wounds manifest differently over and across through men and women and different experiences, and what the next steps for you are. Because I know that it's key to recognize this, acknowledge this, and work through this so you can just feel free and a massive sense of release. Life is so good. Everything that happened to me was to create and show me more of my purpose. And some people won't agree. They don't understand that the pain that we are given is to teach us something, to give us so much wisdom, to give us the medicine that we need that we've been ignoring within ourselves. But from someone who nearly died, was on death's doorstep, put it that way. Nobody can even believe I'm here right now. It's huge when you realize that you can turn all of your pain into purpose. You can turn your mess into your message. You can help other people. You can do so much. But it first starts with helping yourself. Help yourself. Do you know that no one's coming to rescue you? No one's ever going to come rescue you. You have to choose you, and you have to rescue yourself. So I really pray that you choose rescue yourself. Okay, loves. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we will talk more soon about so many other topics. I'll love you and leave you, and have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye, friends.